Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Gold Hoops and God podcast. I'm Dr. Guerra, your host, and today I have a great guest. This is Adriana. Adriana is in Houston, Texas, and is host of Finding the Healer Within podcast. Welcome, Adriana. Hi.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, it's so good to have you. Adriana and I met fairly recently at Podfest. So that was very exciting to meet other podcasters in real time, in face to face. That was always fun.
Definitely.
And I'm really excited to have you. So on my podcast, I usually cover a couple different things. I love talking about culture and faith, and I'm big on reclaiming our inner child and that sense of like reparenting, all that good stuff. And so those are kind of the things that we'll talk about today. And so, yeah, Adriana, I would love to hear from you if you can share with us, with our listeners, a little bit about you, about where you grew up, your identity, and we'll go from there.
Yeah. So I was born in Lufkin, Texas, in the middle of the woods. I was born at home, so it was kind of, according to my mom, I was her easiest
Oh,
birth. So that was pretty nice, for me, because I never want to hurt my mom, right? But she said that, yeah, she,
wow.
before she knew it, I came out. I didn't really eat for 3 days. I just kind of, sucked my thumb. I came out with my thumb sucked. So what me sucking my thumb, right?
Oh.
And is since the beginning, I feel I've always been looking for comfort, so sucking my thumb was something I did
Mm.
up until I was like 7 or 8. But growing up in Lufkin, in a small town here in Texas, well, I didn't officially grow up there because we did move a lot. Lived in Bryan, Texas,
Mm.
and Phoenix, Arizona, even in California for a little bit until we
Oh,
came back to Texas.
really?
Uh,
Oh.
yeah, so
Mhm.
I did definitely like grow up on the road a lot, and it really, I
Mm.
feel, shaped the way that I live my life now, because I'm always traveling. I always look for new things to do, far away here in the States, and
Mhm.
in Mexico sometimes when I go and visit my family. So I'm that type of person that is not too stuck in one place. I don't really like being
Mhm.
too stuck in a place, but I've been here in Houston for
Mhm.
over 20 years now. So I guess I'm kind of stuck here,
Oh,
but I
wow.
keep traveling. So I really love, just learning new things, especially having to do with healing, just so that I can grow and be a better person and maybe help somebody along the way.
I love it. That's beautiful. Yeah, I can definitely resonate as far as being a traveler, being kind of nomadic. It's interesting. Someone told my mom, I don't know if it was like a psychic or a tarot reader or who it was, but someone told my mom when I was very little that I was going to be very nomadic. And it's true. Like I
Oh,
have lived you know, here in LA, in the Bay Area, in Spain, in Dallas for a split second I lived there. But yeah, that sense of like always traveling, always moving, like I totally resonate with that. So that's super cool. Thank you for sharing. Amazing. And I also love what you said in terms of, comfort, right? I think, a lot of us as kids, we had either a favorite blanket or would suck our thumb or would have like a little special stuffy toy or doll or something that would be very special to us, right? That we would carry around. It is beautiful that a lot of children do that. They want to feel, I think, as well, in general, I think as human beings, we want to feel that sense of like safety and comfort, even into adulthood. It
definitely.
looks a little different as we get older, of course, but I appreciate that you shared that. That makes a lot of sense.
Um, Comfort has definitely been a theme for me since the beginning of my life, because I'm always looking for something, either, in someone that I may, like either my parents or my brothers or my
Mhm,
sister. It's always been kind of like a thing that I make sure of, that at all times I am comfortable, even if
mhm,
I put myself in uncomfortable situations, like walking for miles,
mm.
just kind of hiking and stuff like that. I'm thinking more of like a
Mhm.
soul comfort, like sometimes it's
I
food,
see,
sometimes
uh-huh.
it's like travel or like new things. So it
Yeah.
changes definitely.
Yeah, that's true. Even the terminology that we use, comfort food, right? When people are like, "Oh
Yes.
man, I could go for mac and cheese, or I could go for pizza, or I want a brownie or something." It's like there's something very
Yes.
just satisfying and satiating about those foods. Right on. So awesome. So tell me about your family. So you have siblings, it sounds like, yeah?
Yeah, I do. I have an older brother, an older sister, and a little brother. And
Oh,
it's
good.
funny because I'm kind of right in the middle. Me and my sister in the middle. But my sister was a lot more
Yeah.
dedicated to academics, and I was. I mean, it's funny because we're both sisters. She's my only sister. I'm her only sister. And,
Mhm.
we're just so different. We're both
Mm.
like the opposite sides of a coin, which I find pretty funny because she's so organized and proper, and I'm quite the opposite. And I think it
How
kind of
funny.
gives us both like a beautiful experience because we get to see both sides, of the coin.
Totally. Yeah, it is, right? It's like balance, like yin yang kind of learning. I would imagine that you can really like learn from one another and appreciate one another because you are really different. That's cool. I love that. Mhm.
Yeah, no, so with my sister and my family in general, I think is like kind of a musical family. Like my dad used to play guitar with me and my sister, and he taught me my first song, which was Susie Q by CCR.
Oh,
And it was just so much fun, like singing and, stuff like that. But I was always really shy. But then eventually my sister started playing the flute and she was so good at it. She, played from like fifth grade to university level. And she was just,
wow.
really, really talented. And then I
Mm.
played the clarinet. My brother played, the guitar. And then I started singing in my 20s, performing at different places here in Houston, because it just was something that called to me. It was something that gave me a
Mhm.
sense of completion, and also a catharsis,
Mhm.
because I was always really quiet, and then people would see me in they'd be like, "Wow, I didn't know you can make that much noise," and these are just people, that didn't really know me that well because when you get to know me,
Yeah.
I feel I'm pretty funny, so and I'm always kind of loud sometimes. So yeah, it's kind of something I shook off the shyness as I grew up.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. Performing is it can be very cathartic, I think, especially when it comes to like facing our fears. I think it can be very powerful. I want to kind of dive in a little bit more. That's amazing that all your family is so talented and they all play instruments. That's super cool.
Yeah.
That's amazing. I love music. I don't know how to play instruments, but I would love to learn one day. More into
Yeah.
dancing, I guess you could say. Like,
Oh,
yeah,
yes. I
I love
definitely
it.
also love dancing because I mean, even as kids, my parents, they had us kids. So in the small town where we lived, there was this place called the Starlight Club, and everybody had their quinceañeras there, their weddings and stuff.
Um,
So like it was our like entire family, like cousins, tias, tios, all in one place
yeah,
because we all lived in the same town. And they'd take us out every weekend while they were dancing and having fun. We were running around with our cousins and or
that's cute. Yeah,
sleeping on chairs once we got too tired. So it was pretty fun,
right.
like to have that experience and also have my or allow my parents to have their experience with having fun
Mhm.
without kind of leaving us with a babysitter or anything like that. So
When when a person has big family, you can kind of do that. It's like, oh, they're with the cousins or they're with this aunt, that, uncle, like they're good, they're fine. And we can kind of have some time to ourselves and stuff. That's so fun. I know the classic, like kids
yeah.
sleeping on the, on the chairs when the music's like blasting. It's so funny. There's so many memes about that now. It's like, you grew up Latino when, like, it's so cute. That's so cute. Oh man. That's sweet. That's really awesome. So getting into you know, kind of talking more about like faith and spirituality. I really love your podcast, Finding the Healer Within. So, do you want to share with us? And you talked with me before we got started recording that you've been doing the podcast for over 3 years, and I'm sure that that journey has also shaped you. Like the the podcast process, the conversations, all those things I'm sure have also kind of transformed you along the way. So if you wouldn't mind kind of telling us about, how you got started, right? How you got started, why you chose, right? Why you kind of chose that topic, as far as your podcast, and what you've learned about healing and spirituality.
Oh yeah,
Mhm.
so it was an
Mhm.
interesting thing because I had been in my healing process for a long time, and I had
Mhm.
gone. I was on the radio previously locally as a co-host, and I would kind of do the music thing, get people on the radio, interview people, and I really enjoyed
Mhm.
it. It was something that I found. It was a way to connect to other people, get to know them, and for them to kind of let loose. It was really
Mhm.
interesting how I was, once somebody, once you connect with someone through an interview, you can kind of help break down their walls and,
Mhm.
kind of get to know them on a personal level by asking them
Right.
all different types of questions. So that kind of interested me. And I did a couple of interviews when I was traveling. I went to a place called Toyavale here in Texas to report on the fracking that they were doing there. And I met
Oh.
kind of a lot of people that helped me center my focus on my healing journey because I was a little bit unhealthy. I didn't really eat the right things. I didn't exercise too
Mm.
much. But they kind of encouraged me to do that and to, like my friend Lori, who's in Austin, she was one of the driving forces. Like I remember when we first met, it was like she was my cousin. It was so interesting. And we just became inseparable. So much so that we ended
Wow.
up driving back to Houston at the time they were living here.
Mm.
From there, I decided to focus more on my healing and my
Mhm.
spirituality because I grew up Catholic, and I was always very
Mhm.
devoted to the idea of God. And I would have different experiences that were not necessarily aligned with the Catholic mentality, but they would happen in
Mm.
church. So I was like, okay, this is different.
Yeah.
Like for instance, I would be praying and I would ask God, I'd be like, what if you're real, like hold my hand, and then I could feel like a hand
Ooh,
holding, my hand. And it was interesting. And that was,
I
kind of
love
when I
it.
was older.
Mhm.
But when I was
Mhm.
younger, I was around 5 years old. And uh, in the Catholic Church at the time we were going to church just about every day, and they had these like healing sessions where they would like put their hands on your head and then you'd end up falling back and you'd kind of be kind of in a trance. And I did
Mm.
that and I was like, oh, let's see what this is about, and I was such a little kid, but I remember them putting their hands on my forehead and then falling back. And then I could see my deceased grandfather. He was waving at me in my mind's eye.
Whoa.
I could
Uh-huh.
feel
Yeah.
him, and he was like, "Hola, mija," and I was like,
Ah!
"Oh wow, it's so cool." So I ran over to my brother and my sister, and I told them about it. I was like, I saw Grandpa," and they all
Oh.
started laughing at me, and I was like, "Oh, okay. So this is something I'm gonna keep to myself and just tell my mom because because she
Oh.
was the only one that was like
She
open
understood
to
what that
those
meant, like
ideas."
yeah, yeah,
Yes, yeah,
wow.
because she would see him too. She
Mhm.
would dream about him, things like that. So she was uh,
Wow.
kind of my
Amazing.
guide into the spiritual world, which I don't think that she would
Beautiful.
enjoy because she's very Catholic and she wants me to have like a lot of faith in the Catholic Church. But I
Yeah.
was able to explain to her that my path is going to be a little bit different because I'm going to be
Mhm.
me, and she is very accepting. She's
Oh my
just
gosh.
such a beautiful person, that
Wow.
that helped me figure out what it is that the way
Mm.
that I wanted to live my spirituality. And through the healing process, I met people like
Mm.
my friend Absalom, who is he's a voodoo doctor, I believe, and he's here in Houston. And I learned a lot of things from him
Mm.
just about the
Mhm.
spiritual world, and
Mhm.
it kind of connected me to a different world.
Mhm.
And through him, I met another friend named Energy, and
Yeah.
she's a massage therapist. She was working at a different massage place. And then eventually she
Mhm.
got her own business. So then I got the idea. I was like, I know these people, and I remember it took me years to find them and like to learn about different spiritualities. So I said, well, what if somebody
Mhm.
made a resource that allowed people to connect with curanderos and unconventional healers so that they could find their
Yes.
roots? And kind of like I did. And I was like, oh well, let me be the one. And energy was actually the one that
Mhm.
encouraged me, because it was kind of like an idea in the back of my head, and I was like, maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. But then it was a conversation with her that we had before a Nawat class that she was allowing in her space, and she's
Mm.
like, do it, you should do it, if you're called to it, you should do it. And I was like, okay, you know what,
I
I'll
love
do
it.
it. And then a little bit before I was going to start the podcast, I actually got into a car accident that totaled my car. And
Oh my god.
yeah, it
Oh
was
my
crazy, but
god,
I
Donna, that's
that would
crazy.
have, you know,
I'm so
yeah,
glad
it
you were
was it was really,
okay. That's awful. Oh my god. That's
yeah, and it was
traumatic.
just
Like, it's
like,
very
oh,
traumatic. Yeah.
yeah, definitely. And it was like
Wow.
something that regularly would have, made me quit what I was focused on, and I would have just,
Mhm.
not done the podcast. But then I thought about it and I was like, no, this is something that you have to do. And it was more like kind of like my guides telling me, this is something that you have to do,
Mhm.
so you have to
Mhm.
keep working at it. And I was like, okay. And in the process, I met so many different people, and up until now, and people from Austin, from California, from Mexico, doctors, archaeologists, music therapists.
Mhm.
So it was something
Mhm.
that opened up a whole new world that I didn't really realize was right around me. A community that I could tap
Mhm.
into in order to strengthen myself and become a better person, and also help influence other people to do the same for themselves. Because I had also in that time learned about different cults and things like that, and I didn't want
Mhm.
people
Mhm.
to like the main concept of cults, from what I saw in the research that I was doing,
Mhm.
was that these are people that were looking for spirituality. They were in a broken place. They were broken people, to some extent.
Right.
And then they were kind of convinced by these people who were not doing things in their best interest, to kind of give away their
Right.
life. So
Yes.
that's kind of how I
Mhm.
came up with the title of Finding the Healer Within, because I didn't want people
Beautiful.
to be like consumed by other people's ideas, and to look within
Mhm.
themselves, just kind of with help of the community and curanderos and teachers, to find
Mhm.
themselves and the healer within them, you know?
Incredible. There's so oh man. I was like, where do I begin to that was amazing. Thank you, Adriana. Wow, there's so much there that I want to like touch upon. Well, I'll start here. I agree with you 1000% that it is about finding the healer within. I mean, that's actually very much part of the Christian message too. Like, we are created in the image of God. We have the imago Dei within us. We are filled with the Holy Spirit. God is not something apart from us. God is present
Mhm.
in everyone, in everything. So that, that lines up there too. You know what I'm saying? In other words, it's not so
Definitely.
disconnected. It's a little different, but it's not so disconnected. And that is really incredible. And I agree with you too that sometimes people, yeah, people seek help outside of themselves. And if they're in a very vulnerable place in their life, unfortunately, they can get easily kind of manipulated, led astray. It does happen for sure, and that's why I think it's so true. Like, looking within, developing one's intuition. I think that we all have intuition. I think that a lot of people ignore it, or they kind of
Yeah.
like brush it off like, oh, yeah, 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 that's a coincidence, blah, 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 blah. Right. For example, like oh, yes, when I finally decided to start the podcast, it was because for months I was seeing things about podcasts, starting a podcast. I listened to tarot readings, and it was like, some of you are starting a podcast soon. And what really was like the cherry on top, I had borrowed a book from the library, unrelated to podcasting, totally unrelated to podcasting. And you know how people will sometimes leave like a receipt or like, a little like post it note or something in a library book that they forgot is in there. It was a road mic sticker. And I was like, okay, like
Oh,
Rode mics is what they use primarily for recording. So much so that I had to, I'm not sponsored yet, Rode, but I had to buy a Rode mic. I had to buy a Rode mic. I was like, I have to do the podcast. I have to buy a Rode mic. But things like that, like anyone else would be like ignoring it forever, where it was like, no, like everything is pointing you in the direction of like, just do it. Like your voice is needed. You have to do a podcast. It doesn't matter if there's 500 other podcasts, on like religion. Who
yeah.
cares? Right? Your voice is different. So I finally like agreed. I was like, okay, okay, God, okay, Spirit, I'll do it. But I really also love what you mentioned in terms of a soul tribe. People use the term soul tribe, right? Or just kind of
Yeah.
aligning with people who are on the same page is another way to think of it.
Mhm.
Finding those people who are supportive, who are going to be cheerleaders, who really want to see you succeed, that is worth gold. Like that is incredible. Once you
Yeah.
kind of like find those people, and it takes time. It takes time to find that kind of community, or to even build that sort of community too. I think it's a process.
Yeah.
I love what you shared also about your mom, and that she also is very in touch with her, obviously with her faith, but in a even more like spiritual sense, that where she saw your grandfather too. She's like, oh yeah, like I see abuelito too, right? That's so cool. And that she didn't make you feel like, mija, what are you talking about, right? Because
Yeah.
it could have also gone right. It could have also gone in that direction, and she could have been like, no, I don't know what you're saying, I don't understand what you're telling, I don't get it. So I'm really excited. Like I'm really happy and excited that your mom was open in that sense. And I also love the story that you shared, that you asked God, like, okay, God, like hold my hand. And that's so beautiful. Like so, oh my gosh. That's so cute. It's so beautiful. And actually, you're probably familiar with the footprints poem. It's like when life
Oh,
was the hardest, that's when I carried you, right? That kind of sense, which I think is
yeah.
it's so beautiful. It's such a great image. And so I think it's true. I think that God's spirit is walking with us, even when we might not feel it, even when it might be really tough and frustrating and just really difficult times, that's actually when God is most present. So I really enjoy all of those different things that you shared. And yeah, and it's true. Like I'm similarly, like I was raised Catholic, but I think that over the years, I would say especially since the pandemic, that was that was such a turning point for the whole world,
Right.
just on a personal level, on a spiritual level, like basically, how people are using that term crash out. I was like, I feel like I crashed out. I was like, I'm dead. Like I cannot. I had to completely reboot, right? It's like I had to reboot my whole life for different reasons.
Mhm.
And I think it was then that breaking through opened up like a whole different world, like in terms of spirituality, in terms of being open to things like Reiki. I'm more into tarot now, like paying attention to things like angel numbers, synchronicities. I'm like, whoa, okay. Like this is a whole different experience. And it's cool. Like it's
Mhm.
actually it's actually really cool and really fun. And I think the key is being open to it. I feel like we can miss out. We can miss out on the little miracles, we can miss out on the synchronicities if we're not open to it. You have to be kind of open to it to receive that, for sure.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And it's something that I started doing like kind of first with yoga and like meditation, and then I felt things that I had never felt before, and I was like,
Mm,
wow, like it's true, my breath can take me where no
mhm,
other substance, nothing outside of me can take me. So I was like, let me
mhm,
look a little bit deeper into that because I had experiences in my younger life. For instance, I'm at my sister's quinceañera. I was 13 about, and I was dancing, and I had been dancing for a long time, but I hadn't drinking water, and I was like, oh, whatever, I'm
mm.
having fun. Let me do this, and it was I was dancing, and then all of a sudden, I felt myself come out of my body. I had a out of body experience, and where I could see myself on the dance floor
Oh.
from the sidelines, and at the same time I couldn't really feel my body, but I could see it. And then I was like, whoa, what's this? This is
Wow.
interesting. And then
Whoa.
that's kind of is kind of what sparked my curiosity about
Yeah.
things like mushrooms, for instance, that could take you to that space. Not
Mhm,
necessarily
mhm,
trying it, but
mhm, mhm,
investigating the scientific aspect of it, because I was always really into
mhm,
science. So I would go to the arboretum and study the books they had on mycology and why it is that these things had that specific effect on human beings. And then, of course, I learned
mhm.
about ayahuasca and all these other plant medicines,
Right,
which
right.
the main thing, the main message that I found was that these particular plants have certain properties that unlock
Mhm.
the sensory cage that we're in, in this body,
Yes.
which is pretty
Right.
interesting, because we are not privy to everything that's around us, like
Mhm,
dark matter and things like that. So science can explain it. And I was like, wow, this is really interesting. No wonder people are drawn to these things because they are looking for another way to live or another perspective to come into their mind.
mhm.
And it was
Yeah.
just so interesting to me that these things existed. And I was like, well, let me look a little bit more into it. Maybe someone who has more experience can give a little bit more
Mhm,
information to people that
mhm,
might be looking for that type of plant medicine. So that's definitely something that I want to, bring to people. Which I know I'm just kind of a liaison, like a person who, like, oh, hey, I know this person, talk to them about this. They might be able
connecting.
to help you
Mhm,
with that.
mhm.
Yeah,
Right,
connecting people to
right.
to each other, and not only in because I realized that I was really good at that. At a one event that I was at, I connected these two women that by chance, just by conversation, I was like, "Oh, what do you do? Do you have kids and stuff?" And then they started talking about
Mhm.
being single mothers, and then
Oh,
my
wow.
friend was like, "Wow, like." How did you know that we would get along? And I was like, I didn't. I was just talking, So I was
I
like,
love it.
I could use this for good. Yeah.
Amazing. Absolutely. Yeah, it's true. It's a gift, I think. Like that's a gift that you have to unite people, to connect people and kind of share resources basically. That's super cool. Yeah, it's so fascinating. That's a whole that's a whole conversation too about, mushrooms, ayahuasca. You know, I I my one of the things that I noticed though is like in some ways, in some places, it's become, like, trendy, right? There's that whole
Yeah.
conversation too where it's become, like, a tourist thing, it's trendy, it's like,
Mhm.
in other words, like, I do think that there's a level of, like, responsibility. You have to be
Mhm.
responsible, you have to be with a trained, like, practitioner who knows what they're doing. Yeah, but it is fascinating the way in which it really can, like, unlock like, unlock, like, different layers and really I think break you out like I think it breaks us out of our baseline, our like everyday, we're in our
Mhm.
heads, blah blah blah. Yeah, it's incredible.
Right.
It is really cool. Nice, nice. I see your little como se llama, your poster in the back with with the mushrooms is
Oh,
great.
yes. Yeah, I've always really, really
Perfect.
kind of been into science and like space and things like that. So that, especially plants, because, that especially with fungi, because it's something that grows out of death. Something has to be decaying for it
Mm.
to be able
Oh,
to
that's
be in the
deep.
right,
That's
um,
deep.
in the right growth state. And I've even
Mhm.
learned recently that the mycelium can just be
Mhm.
there for a long time, and the mushroom itself is just the fruit that exists or is created with the right conditions. So it's like
Yeah.
it's almost like looking at it like the possibility of healing is always there, but you just have to put it yourself in the right conditions for yourself to grow.
Mhm.
I've always seen them kind of an example of that, of that growth, and spreading that information to other people, because not all mushrooms are the type of mushrooms that could unlock your mind in that sense. Some can kill you, some
Right.
can feed you.
Right.
So it's
Right.
it's definitely not
Oh
something
my
you should play
god.
with for sure.
That's beautiful. I'm writing notes as we're talking to remember to mention. I love that. That's amazing. The possibility of healing is always there. Interestingly enough, I don't think this is a coincidence. I'm reading a book right now by Joe Dispenza called "You Are the Placebo." I feel like that's the title. Do you know what I'm talking about? Where he basically talks about
Yes.
how you can't heal yourself, even in the craziest of conditions. Like
Hmm.
it is actually genetically possible to not
Yes.
manipulate. I don't like the word manipulate, but to like transform. Better word, transform anything within your body. It's so fascinating. Yeah, I've been working on that book
Yeah,
like little by
especially
little. I read a couple pages in the morning. Yeah, yeah,
yeah, and
it's so
especially with
cool.
Joe Dispenza because he has a very interesting story. The way that he got into that work was because of his own healing. You know, his the
Yes,
doctors told him that he wouldn't be able to walk, you know, at a certain
yes.
point because his back was in a certain state. And then through
Mm-hmm.
meditation, he was able to through frequencies
Mm-hmm.
like I believe if you're in the alpha frequency, it's like the best frequency to be in for healing and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, I've
Mm-hmm.
seen the scientific evidence that he's
Mm-hmm.
presented from his conferences that you can cure cancer with it, you can cure depression. You know, it's like really, really interesting. Like there's,
Incredible.
you know, someone who even had bone cancer throughout his entire body. He only had a few months to live. He
Wow.
went to the conference and they had like a special healing session for him with other healers who were helping transmute that energy. And then they
Wow.
also offered the idea of that disease is presented in our in like the physical body or like the energy field around us, the magnetic field,
Mhm,
that
mhm.
it's there
The energy body, yeah,
first, and then once your body
yeah,
accepts it, it kind of sinks in and makes you sick, you
right,
know. But there's a way
right.
to like tap into that healing energy that could dissolve that. And it was something so
Right.
beautiful to me that I could, you know, that through meditation you can do that.
Mhm.
And me and a friend, we went to Piedras Negras last year for the Day of the Dead to celebrate.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, we did a
How
lot of
cool.
meditating and like everything just aligned so perfectly. I was like,
Mhm.
meditation is the key. It's like
It
it's the
really
key that you
is.
unlock
Yes,
everything with. It's so beautiful.
it is.
And
It
it's
is.
amazing,
Mhm,
yeah.
mhm. Yeah, that's really what helped me a lot. I mean, I kind of had to in a way. So I've mentioned this before on the podcast, in different episodes. So summer of 2020, I was diagnosed with bipolar. And so what I mean, like total crash out, like I had to like reset everything. And the only way to like learn how to like manage my stress, my anxiety, all these things, which are triggers, right? Like which are kind of triggers to a manic episode, was things like reading, journaling, meditation, stuff like that. I had to learn to do that. I mean, I feel like I was
Mhm.
introduced to it a little bit. Like in high school or college, like a religion class would mention it. We do a little meditation. Awesome. But I was like, no, like I actually really need to practice this consistently. This needs to be a daily practice.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I agree. It makes all the difference in the world. Yeah, Joe Dispenza is incredible. You're right. Like he was told he wasn't going to walk again. They wanted to do emergency surgery and put like I think two rods in his back because his
Yeah.
spinal cord was totally wrecked. He had an accident. He'd had a I think it was it a biking accident or something?
I
Um,
believe so, yeah.
yeah, was it a bike accident? I think he was hit by a car, so it was awful. But in any case, yeah, he is incredible, and I love that he's really bringing together like the scientific and the spiritual. He's showing how they're very interconnected, that there is scientific proof for what people are saying is happening in their bodies, or is the power of visualization, things like that. So it's good. It's super good. Fun. And so as we're kind
Mhm.
of wrapping up, Adriana, if you wouldn't mind sharing with us, well, you kind of have a little bit in terms of like how you see your own kind of like relationship with God, spirit, like your like how you kind of understand your belief or faith today, because you kind of shared how you grew up Catholic and now you're kind of have learned about so many things, since then. I would love to hear from you.
Yeah, yeah. So like I said, I was Catholic growing up, and I was always very devoted. It was something that I always wanted to connect to, because my heart, it called me to connect with the idea of God and angels and things like that. But once I started like seeing the world and like meeting new people and understanding their
Mhm.
perspective, even though I grew up Catholic, my dad was always a researcher. He always looked at things, he would take us to different
Mm.
places, different kinds of churches, so that we could
Mhm.
understand and see where we fit best. And he always
Mhm.
encouraged that within me, like, especially traveling and like seeing new places and
Love it.
understanding new things. And I
It's so
also,
good.
with my sister, we explored the Muslim religion when she was in college with some Turkish girls. And they were such beautiful people. And I
Mm.
learned about
Yeah.
the interconnectedness of
Islam is
the
beautiful.
Muslim
Islam is
faith.
incredible. Like, it's mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the
Mhm.
interconnectedness it has with the Catholic, origin story. Jesus and the
Yeah.
Virgin Mary are both in the Quran, and through
Mhm.
talking to people and being open, I realized
Yeah.
really that I felt like I should honor every type of religion, and
Mm.
none as well. And of course,
Mhm.
now I
Mhm.
work at a chapel that um, offers that idea. It's the Rothko Chapel, and it's kind of a meditative space. It's always really quiet, and there's all these
Mhm.
holy books there. The Hopi creation story, the
Mm.
Muslim, the Quran, the Torah, and all these different holy books, all sitting in one
Mhm.
place. Just kind of
Beautiful.
having a good time. Like there for whoever wants
In
to be there.
harmony and
So
peace. Oh my gosh. I love
yeah.
it.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
it's interesting to see like people's reaction. So through my experience in life and also working where I work now, it's offered me the idea that everybody's right in some form or way. It's the way that you take action with your religion, I feel,
1,000%.
that makes or
Mhm.
breaks it, because there can be a Catholic person that
Mhm.
accepts gay people or trans people, which I am definitely that type of person, because when I grew up and I
Mhm.
got older, they're like, "Oh, I don't want to hang out with Catholic people because they're anti-gay," and I was like, "Wait a minute, my parents
No.
didn't never taught me to hate anybody. They always taught me
Exactly.
to,
Same.
try and see things from their perspective and things like that." So
Yeah,
I
accept
was always
people.
really
Mhm.
open. Yeah. So even
Oh,
though like
man.
my
Yeah.
parents, I'm sure they would prefer me being Catholic and going to church and stuff, they're also
Mhm.
understanding of the fact that I'm going to be different. And if I
Mhm.
want, to see other spaces, that they've always offered the idea that that's fine, that's okay, that it's not going to disconnect me from God, because like you said earlier, we were made in the image of God. So if that's the case, he's
Mhm.
within me, he's within the person next to me.
We all are.
And
Yeah. Mhm.
yes, definitely. Even the
Mhm.
people that I don't agree with, because we're all from the
That's
same
that's
thread.
that's the hardest part is like, wait a
Yeah.
minute. Like it's that truly like that is I think that is like the most challenging thing is to really see good in everyone, right? Even people who are
Mhm.
doing crazy things, right?
Yeah.
That's the hardest part, it's that's the most challenging thing. I'm with you 1,000%. I totally like co-sign agree with everything you said about religions and people of faith and things like that too. That's super cool because I pretty much feel I yeah, like almost identically. I feel like this is one thing that I thought of. I'm like, wait a minute. Like the creator can create anything. The creator can do
Mhm.
whatever the creator wants. Could it be that the creator I'm gonna think of the right word. Revealed the creator's self in different ways to different
Yeah.
communities. Why not? You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Because like you said, like oh my God,
definitely.
there's so much overlap. I've also, like you, like I've also had the privilege of spending time with Muslim communities, with Jewish communities, like uh my my neighbors are from the Church of Latter-day Saints, so I feel like I've had exposure to like a lot of different religions. I'm like, this is pretty similar, like, in
Yeah.
general, like the messages are very similar.
Mhm.
And it would be so lovely if people could just see that, and like realize that that's like we don't have to fight each other and win, right? Like this is not like a battle to win or something to like prove it
Yeah.
wrong or prove it right. Like my gosh. So
Mhm.
I 1,000% agree with you. It's super cool. Adriana, this is amazing. Oh, what a lovely conversation. So
Yes, it
my
was.
last quick question before we wrap up is,
Mhm.
what advice would you give to your inner Nina or to little you? And this question can be either more personalized or just, what general advice would you give to young people today?
I would have to say, just to my younger self, I would have to say, be brave and be prepared because you don't know what's coming.
Ooh,
And and I was just thinking about
yeah.
that idea yesterday. A friend of mine, we were talking about the future a couple years ago, and she was telling me, she's like, there's worse things to come, and I was like, oh my God, you're scaring me. And then she's like,
Oh
no, no, no,
no.
you don't have to be afraid, you just have to be prepared. And I was like, you're right, because
Mm,
if we prepare our souls, our minds, to
hmm.
deal with all the things that can come up, like for instance, a friend of mine recently inherited three kids from her sister-in-law because she unfortunately passed away, and she's just like
Oh
kind of
wow.
up in the
Oh
air, and she's
wow.
just like,
That's so
I only wanted
hard.
two
Wow.
kids, and now I have five, and I'm like, you know what? We're gonna get through this. Where you have people to help you, you have the
We find
resources,
a way.
you're
Exactly.
good.
We find a way.
Yes, yeah,
Wow.
definitely.
Wow.
And she's,
That's
you just
amazing.
have to know that everything's going to be okay. You
Yeah.
know, even if it doesn't feel like it in the moment, we're all going, I think there's always a
Right.
purpose to what we go through, and for us
Mhm.
to change and grow as people,
Whew.
even if it hurts, because I know I've suffered, quite a
Yeah.
bit, like where I'm just like sitting there and I'm like staring at the wall and I'm like, damn it, what the hell? And I'm like, but this is going to serve a purpose for the
Right.
future. Like future Adriana is going to look
Exactly.
back at this and be like, that was
Yeah.
nothing. That was nothing. Yeah.
Yes. Yes. Oh my gosh. I love that. It's so true. Yeah, in some cases more than others, I'm like, "Okay, I see why I went through that. Okay, cool." But some things I'm
Yeah.
like, "Man, can we do a redo? Like, I didn't like that very much. That was not fun." But it's true. Like
Definitely.
we're so resilient. We make it through. Life isn't perfect. That too. Like life is not perfect. Life does not go exactly the way that we would have liked day by day, year by year. However,
Definitely.
I do have to believe that in, the creator's grand design or God's plan, however you want to say it, it all is going to work out, like it's all going to work out in some way, shape, or form. So yeah,
Hmm.
that's super amazing. I love that advice. Thank you so much, Adriana. This was a pleasure. You're awesome. Thank
Thank you.
you. Thank you to
Yeah.
our listeners. Make sure to find Adriana's podcast, Finding the Healer Within. Adriana, where can they find your podcast?
You can find my podcast on Instagram, on Spotify, on YouTube, and anywhere else that you get podcasts. And, hopefully I can have you on the show as well in the future.
For sure, I would love to be on your show. Oh my goodness. Thank you, Adriana, again. Thank you, everyone who's listening. I'm Dr. Guerra, host of the Gold Hoops and God podcast. New episodes are out every Wednesday. You can find the podcast everywhere you stream your podcast, like Spotify, Apple, iHeart, and the YouTube video of the interviews are also available on Wednesdays.
Bye. Thank you. Bye.